Welcome to the RFP Success Show with host Lisa Rehurek, the #1 sought-after authority on RFP success. Each week, we bring you information, strategies, or resources to help you win more business through RFPs and have a little fun doing it. Let's get this week's episode started.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the RFP Success Show. As always, I am your host, Lisa Rehurek, and I am here to bring you information, strategy, and resources to help you win more business through RFPs. So let's talk about this week's episode, which is all about building trust in a written document. So we all know that trust is important. You've heard it a million times. People need to know, like, and trust you before they'll buy from you. And trust is really actually the #1 of those three things. People really have to trust you. Every sale has 5 basic obstacles. And this is really important because I think this is going to get you excited. 5 basic obstacles: no need, no money, no hurry, no desire, and no trust. Now think about that for a minute, because when we've got an RFP in front of us that we're bidding on, we know they have a need. We know that they've got money. It might not be as much as we hope that they would have, but we know they've got money. We know that they're ready. They're in a hurry to some degree because they've put out this RFP. They've got a desire. Now it's your job to build the trust. So out of those 5 obstacles, you're already past 4 of them by the time you get an RFP in hand. And that is huge. Ask any salesperson that is boots on the ground, cold calling, even warm calling. Having 4 out of 5 of those obstacles already out of your way is a really big deal. Now, again, it's your job to build the trust. And how do you do that when it's a written document, right? So you've got to build that trust like nobody else is doing. All right, so you've got to really stand out over and above. And this is one mistake that I see people make, is that they just assume that because we're really smart, because we've got the experience, because we've got the background, the expertise, whatever that looks like, that's automatically going to show them that we can do this. Well, sure, but so does everybody else that's bidding on it. Most people are not going to bid on something if they can't claim all of that stuff. So how are you going to showcase it over and above everybody else? So your job now is to build the trust and to build it like nobody else is doing. All right, so how do you do that when you're writing a response to an RFP? The first thing is, and this is kind of obvious and you're going to roll your eyes, but bear with me here. The first thing is that upfront relationship building. Before that RFP hits the street, you've got to be building the relationship with the people that you know are buying these services. You should know your targets. They should be familiar with you. And you should be doing that before the RFP hits the streets, because we know once that RFP hits the streets, we can't talk to anybody. You can't build the relationships. So make sure you're building that into your business development process, that you are working throughout the non-procurement process to build relationships with your key targets. Okay? The more you've done of that, the easier it is to build trust, because the evaluator or the decision maker is going into that review already knowing and trusting you. Okay, hopefully in that relationship building, you're building trust with them. That's important, right? The less you've done, the harder road it will be to instill it in writing. So you've got more of an uphill battle. So just know that. And if your competitors are out there building those relationships, then they've got a leg up on you, and you don't want that. So make sure you're doing that, you're building that into the process, and you're making that happen. Now, with all that said and done, not everybody on the evaluation team is going to be part of that conversation or relationship building. So what next? Now we go into the layer of building trust in the written document. So how can your proposal itself instill trust when they're just reading words on the paper, right? So let's talk about what that could look like. There's 5 things. The first one is going to seem a little obvious, but you would be surprised at how often I see this. Do not lie or over-exaggerate. Now, again, this might seem like a no-brainer, But I see this all the time where people really over exaggerate. What they're really trying to do is spin something positive. Because if there's an elephant in the room, if there's like an element of this that you don't have experience in, you can call that out. I always suggest to people calling out the elephant in the room, but you don't just want to say, hey, we don't have experience in this and move on. You want to talk about maybe why you not having experience is a good thing, or what that has meant to other clients in the past, or how can you, I hate to use the term spin because that feels manipulative, but how can you turn it into a positive, and how can you talk about it? For example, if they are looking for audited financial statements and you don't have them because you're a small business, you can talk about the fact that, hey, we don't have audited financial statements. We're a small business, but here's what we do have. We're happy to disclose openly everything about our financials. And then you can in turn maybe say something about why it's great to work with a smaller company. So those are the kinds of things that I'm talking about, is that you want to pull in the positive. You do not want to lie, because they will be able to tell, even in writing, if you're BSing them. So don't bullshit them. Just tell it like it is and add a positive word to that. All right. The second thing is, and this goes in line with what I was just talking about, is you want to be authentic. And if you think about anything that you read, an editorial in a newspaper, a magazine article, even a book, you can tell just by the type of writing whether somebody's, again, being a bullshitter or if they're being authentic. If they're being like a real person, just kind of down to earth and telling you like it is, instead of trying to put on this air of, maybe high education or I know better than you. When you do that, it turns off your readers. So you want to be as authentic as you can. And I understand that's hard to do when you're trying to respond to something technically, when you're trying to, get across your expertise, but you've got to be a little bit more human. And I'll tell you, that has changed over the years. In today's world, people crave authenticity because they want to work with people that are not going to lie to them, people are not going to try to pull the wool over their eyes, people that are not being somebody that they're not. They want to work with genuine, authentic human beings because obviously they're humans too. It's funny how we forget that. But everybody that's reading this and evaluating it is thinking, I got to work with this person. Well, not everybody, maybe not everybody's going to be working with you, but a lot of them are thinking that I got to work with this person or this team or this company. How is it going to feel to be working with them? And even if they're not consciously evaluating on that, they are subconsciously thinking it. So you've got to be authentic. Okay. One of the ways that I tell people, one of the best ways to be authentic is to, especially if you're somebody like me, so I write really, I shouldn't call it academic, but professional, corporate professional, buttoned up. And for any of you that know me, I am not corporate professional buttoned up, as shown by my bullshit comment earlier, right? So I am not a super buttoned up person, but because I was in corporate America for so long, that's how I learned how to write. And I have people that will tell me all the time, like, what is this article, Lisa? This is not you. This is so buttoned up. And so what I found works for me is that I dictate. And what happens when you dictate is that it comes across much more conversational. So pop a dictation app onto your phone and dictate the answer to a question. And then maybe have somebody else transcribe it for you, and then you can go back and edit it. But what you're going to get out of that is a much more conversational feel. And the people on the other end, the evaluators, are going to read that more easily. So A, you're going to build trust because they're going to be able to understand what you're saying to them, but also they're going to feel a little bit more warmth. Now, don't let that word scare you. I'm not telling you to get all, cozy and touchy-feely in this. Just adding that little bit of warmth so that, there's a little bit more of an emotion in it. And they're going to pick up on that. As subtle as it's going to be, they're going to pick up on it. So that's a really great trick to being more authentic and showing up a little bit more yourself in a written response. Okay. Number 3, the third way that you can build trust is to tell stories. And again, depending on the proposal, if you're bidding on tech services for a transit company, you don't want to tell some childhood story about you, but you can tell a story about how you worked with another company. And yes, you can think about this as a case study, but I prefer to call it a story because a case study can also be really buttoned up. And while you need it to be factual and you need that information to be there and statistically correct and you want to quantify it, you also, again, want that human spin to it so that it feels like, hey, this just wasn't about the bottom line. This just wasn't about numbers. There was a human interaction to this. And how did that human interaction go? How well did we communicate? I don't know that I've ever seen an RFP that doesn't ask about communication in some way, shape, or form. Because I'll tell you what, so many companies or projects have gotten burned because communication was poor. They want to know how it's going to feel to work with you and that you're going to be open and communicative with them. And again, you're not going to sweep things under the carpet and lie to them. So that those stories really help to bridge that gap. All right. Number 4, you've heard me say this before, you're going to hear me say it forever and a day, is that you've got to substantiate your claims. So if you toss out that you're innovative and you don't back that up in any way, your trust gets eroded. And I know that sounds crazy and it might be splitting hairs, but when we're looking at these evaluation criteria, it is sometimes like splitting hairs. I've seen somebody win on 2 points. I've seen somebody win on 1 point. So you want to do everything that you can so that the evaluators are really believing you. And they will score you a little bit higher in the areas where they can. Judgment does come into this. Not everything is hugely objective. Cost can be very objective because it is what it is. It's a hard number. But some of these other things that you're getting evaluated and reviewed on are a little bit more subjective. Yes, there's a question that maybe asks, do they fulfill the 5-year requirement? Okay, that's a simple yes or no. But I will tell you, all throughout the RFP, your evaluators are making judgment calls on you. They are, whether you like it or not. And you want them to believe you and you want them to start feeling that trust. And if you're not substantiating your claims, then maybe it's splitting hairs, maybe it's subconscious, whatever it is, you're not going to get that trust. So again, back to that example of innovative, if you're saying you're innovative and they're not reading proof that you're innovative, to them, first and foremost, you're not innovative. And secondly, then they start feeling like you're bullshitting them. Okay? And then the last one, last but not least, is make sure you have solid references. And this should be happening probably long before the RFP comes out as well, is just making sure that you're touching base with your clients on a regular basis. How's everything going? There's a statistic out there, and this just popped in my mind, so please forgive me because I don't have the actual, I'm not substantiating my claim here, but I don't have the exact percentage, but it's somewhere in the 80s. 80% of people would rather do business with a company that has screwed up but provided a good reconciliation than a company that has never screwed up. And that is based on a lot of online stuff and reviews happening online, but it's human nature. We trust people that have maybe screwed up and fixed it versus somebody that just tries to, again, sweep it under the carpet. So those references of yours are huge. And if you screw something up, number one, you want to know about it. Number two, you want the opportunity to fix it so that they'll get back to having a really good viewpoint of you. And even if it might be a rough road, they, at that point, can trust that you're working to fix it. They're going to give you a good reference. And even if they say something like, well, they kind of screwed this up, but they've done a really great job fixing it, that's going to build more trust in the people calling for the reference. So have solid references. Make sure you're touching base with them at least twice a year, if not more, depending on how much you work with them. So let's do a quick review of these 5 things that your proposal needs to instill trust. The first one, do not lie or over-exaggerate. Number 2, be authentic. Show your authentic self, and I've given you some ways to do that. Number 3, tell stories, and that absolutely pulls in the authenticity, and it goes a little bit deeper than just a case study, right? So tell stories. Number 4, substantiate your claims. If you can't substantiate it, don't claim it. Just leave it out. And then here's the other thing, kind of a sidebar digression, is if you want to be able to substantiate it in the future, map out a game plan for how you can substantiate it. If you want to be known for innovation, then by all means, go out and build some innovation. Go out and build some proof that then you can start using in future proposals. Okay. And then number 5 is have solid references. A lot of times we think of an RFP as this one-dimensional, it comes in the door and we're done. There is so much process and planning around the culture of having a business that gets business through RFPs. There is so much more to it than just responding to this single RFP that comes in the door. And, clients come to me all the time and they're very one-dimensional with it. And it's an uphill battle. The better you are at building that culture so that you're building things like that reference library, the references, and you have a game plan for how many touches you've got with those references throughout the year, and how you're tracking the successes with your references, and how you're tracking the successes with your clients, and how you're maybe putting into your library the testimonials or any little things that these clients say. All of that becomes assets for your response. And it should be part of your culture that you're building year-round, part of the process that your team is working through year-round. And when you've got that, then you've got all of these assets that you can pull from that really help you build all of this trust that I've been talking about today, right? So I know that was a lot of information, a lot to kind of wrap your head around, but think about those 5 things when you're responding. And then to that latter part, my latter point about building the culture, when you've got that culture, it's going to make building that trust easier because you're going to have those assets and because you're going to believe a little bit more in your ability to communicate all of that information because it's not going to be so hard. All right. So there you have it. Build trust. Those 5 obstacles that I talked about at the beginning: no need, no money, no hurry, no desire, no trust. Celebrate the fact that when you get an RFP in the door, 4 of those 5 obstacles are already taken care of. And that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now it's your job to go out and build trust and prove to them that you are the right one to get that business. All right. Thanks, everybody, so much for listening today. As always, I appreciate you. This is Lisa Rehurek, host of the RFP Success Show, and I look forward to having you back again next week. Have a great day.
You have been listening to the RFP Success Show with RFP expert Lisa Rehurek, author of the RFP Success book. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, make sure you click the subscribe button so you don't miss a show. And thanks for spending time with us today.